have been on a retreat here, just out of curiosity? Whoa. A lot of retreats. How many of you have not been on a retreat here? Whoa. How many of you who have not been on a retreat here have been diagnosed with cancer? How many of you is that diagnosis of cancer within the last year? Could you hold your hands up here? Okay. How many of you who've been diagnosed with cancer in the last year who have not been on a retreat here are still in a phase of feeling lost, confused, don't know what to do? Just over there. Okay. Good. I just wanted to have a sense of where everybody was in the journey. How many of you here who've had a diagnosis of cancer, either recent or long ago, found that for all the fear and suffering that your life has been transformed by these? Okay, that's really helpful. Just it's helpful to know who I'm talking about. So, I want to read you a poem. This was written by Stanley Kunitz, who was a poet as he neared his 100th birthday. It's called The Layers. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own, and I am not who I was, though some principle of being abides, from which I struggle not to stray. When I look behind, as I am compelled to look, before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling toward the horizon, and the slow fires trailing from the abandoned campfires, over which scavenger angels wheel on heavy wings. Oh, I have made myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face. Yet I turn, exulting somewhat, with my will intact to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. In my darkest night, when the moon was covered, and I roamed through the wreckage, a nimbus-clouded voice directed me, live in the layers, not on the litter. Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my change. That's as he came toward his 100th. Here's a poem from Rilke, great German poet, Austrian poet, from his book of Hours. God talks to each of us as he creates us, then walks with us silently out of life. But the words spoken to us before we start, those cloudy words of these, sent forth by your senses, go to the very edge of your desire. Invest me. Back behind the things grow as fire, so that their shadows lengthen will always and completely cover me. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Only press on. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself be cut off from me. Nearby is that country known as life. You will recognize it by its seriousness. Give me your hand. introduction. From Mary Oliver in Blackwater Woods, some of you know this. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. I'm going to read that one. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. You see, Wilkie was right when he said, nearby is a country called life. You don't know it by its seriousness. Come to me. The thing I like about poetry like that is it's the living scripture of our time. You know, people used to be able to read, and some people still can, the great spiritual texts. The Old Testament, the New Testament, the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, whatever we're drawn to. But great poetry in our time is what cuts across all of the divisions and the religious traditions. That speaks to us from that place where we can hear a poem again and again, and we can hear scripture again and again, and it speaks to that deep place. And the place it speaks to in us is the place where the three great qualities of being human reside. And the three great qualities of being human are the love of our hearts, the wisdom or learning of our minds, and the work of our hands. These are the three things that each of us is different. In the face of whatever we face in life, what do we have? We have the love, the compassion, the kindness of our hearts. We have the learning, the wisdom of our minds. And then we have putting whatever we learn through love and wisdom together into actual practice in our lives with our hands. And these three gifts, loving, learning, and living our truth. Loving, learning, and living our truth. The work of our heart, our head, and our hands, are found in all the great spiritual traditions. So if you just take the most ancient of the great living religions, the Hindu tradition, the tradition of yoga, and the Bhagavad Gita, there are three yogas that in the great book, the Bhagavad Gita, of Hindu yogic spirituality. And they are the yoga of love, which is bhakti yoga, the yoga of wisdom, which is jnana yoga, and the yoga of service, or the work of our hands, which is karma yoga. You find it in Christianity, faith, hope, charity, of which the greatest charity is love. And you find it in the philosophical tradition, truth, beauty, goodness, again and again and again, because it's built into who we are. This isn't some theory. It's who we actually are. What is our experience of life? What are the most powerful experiences of your life? Ask yourself, is it not love? Have there not been at least moments in the life of every person in this room where you were completely transformed by love? Where love was a power greater than anything else that was available to you. And it wasn't a choice. When love has that power, you either have to deny your life itself or you have to follow where love leads. And it's not always easy. It's not even always kind. But the point is, the power of love is absolutely transformational. And when, in the face of a life-threatening cancer, we experience profound loss, does that loss not transform us in the same way that love does? And why is that? Because loss is the other side of love. Remember, ask yourself in those times in your life when you've been completely transformed by love, whether for a partner, or a child, or a pet, or whatever it is that you have loved with all your heart and soul. What is your greatest fear? That you will lose that which you love. And when our own lives are threatened in that way, we discover that actually, even if we didn't think we loved ourselves, we actually do love ourselves. We actually do, and that sense of loss comes from that sense that something of the most profound importance to us is threatened. So finding the way to live in the face of what life gives us, through the power of love and through understanding that both love and loss open us to the deep seriousness of being a human being. And to ask ourselves in those times, what really matters? You know, how many times when you've had a cancer diagnosis, have you suddenly reassessed how important work is to you, how important family is to you, how important friends are to you? You know, there's a way in which great loss leads us to a beautiful simplicity about what matters in our lives. All the neurotic patterns that we live with every day tend to melt away in the face of a life-threatening illness, and we ask ourselves, why am I really here? Rachel Naomi Brown has a beautiful way of saying it. She says that she believes that the purpose of life is to grow in wisdom and learn to love better. The purpose of life is to grow in wisdom and learn to love better. So when she says that, what do we hear from what we've just been talking about? Wisdom, love, and purpose, right? The work of the heart, the work of the head, the work of purpose, service, and. So I just offer you, if you remember nothing else from today, ask yourself, why are you here now? It can come at any age. You know, they've done studies of love, and they've discovered that love is just as powerful in your 70s as it is in your 20s. It doesn't go away. I mean, you know, other things change, you know. But the power of love does not go away. It is unbelievably powerful. And so if we can find that which we love at any point in our lives, it is a trail of transformation. It is a trail that tells, you know, what is being asked of. But then you want to, as Rachel says, you want to grow in wisdom and learn to love better. What does that mean? Well, it means if you can figure out a way to do it, it's really nice to love without hurting anybody, you know? And that's not always easy, because life changes, and what we are drawn to in love changes. I'm not saying these are simple things, but to deny love in our lives is a powerful, powerful thing to do. And to find a way to love with wisdom and skill, whatever it is that we are drawn to love, has enormous healing power. Simply enormous healing power. I'm sure Gretchen could tell you, I can tell you, incredible stories about people who lived far, far beyond what anybody expected because they discovered love in their life, or we discovered love in our life. You know, whether it was that somebody, I mean, how many times have I seen women with metastatic cancers decide that they're going to live because they have young children, and there's just no argument about it. You know, if there is a way to do this, if there is a way to do this, they will figure it out. And how many times have I watched people who had some sense that there was still some great work in their lives that they needed to accomplish, that there was still something that called them. And you know, it's really interesting that that thing that calls us has this incredible, unique power. It's not some abstract, when I talk about love. What we love is as unique as the iris of our eyes or the fingerprint of our finger. It's uniquely ours. So I'll tell a story to you that I told last night. about an extraordinary pediatrician from Yale who came on a cancer help program. His name was Milton Sen. And his wife had died of ALS while he was nursing her. And while he was nursing her, he was in his 70s, he developed bladder cancer, but instead of getting the curative surgery at the time, he just stayed with his wife until she died, and then his cancer was metastatic. And he came on the cancer help program, and he said to me, Michael, I don't know why I'm here. Everybody else here was trying to live. I never believed in life after death, but I feel my wife was waiting for me. He said, so I don't know why I'm here. I could have talked to Milton forever about diet, stress reduction, exercise, group support, all the good things that help you be a healthier person with cancer, which improves quality of life and is associated with extending survival. I could have, that's real stuff for most of you. I'll come back to that. I could have talked to him forever about that. But that's not what he was trying to do. He wasn't trying to live. He wanted to join his wife, And he had a sense, after a life of not believing in life after death, that she was waiting for him, which I think she probably was. So I thought about it. I said, Milton, I'm not going to try to persuade you. That was clearly his truth, right? He was living his truth. I said, I'm not going to try to persuade you of anything else. But I said, Milton, you're not dead yet. And so while you're here, is there anything you'd like? And he thought about it with great seriousness, and he said, I know what I'd like, but I can't do it. I said, what's that? He said, I'd love to have a cat. And I said, a cat? He said, yeah, I would love to have a cat. And I looked at this 70-year-old wise, thoughtful man. I said, Milton, why can't you have a cat? He said, look, if I get sick, who's going to take care of the cat? And if I die, what will come from the cat? See, we weren't talking about something minor, deep responsibility. I negotiated with Milton all week about whether he could have a cat. I used to teach at Yale, you teach at Yale. We know people in heaven. We'll find somebody to take care of the cat if you get sick. I said, if you die, my wife and I would be honored to have your cat. But in that case, let's get a Siamese, because my wife loves Siamese. But Milton wouldn't hear of getting a Siamese cat. He had spent his whole life taking care of poor, abused children. He wasn't going to get some fancy body cat, If he was going to get a cat, it was going to be a poor, abused cat. Nothing fancy. That's what it is. So, but he still didn't believe he could do it when he left. So I didn't hear from him a couple of weeks, and then he calls kind of gruff voice. He said, I just want to let you know I was driving by the ASPCA and I happened to drop in, don't know why. There was this little kitten that somebody had thrown out the window of a moving car, and broken a couple of legs, and so I'm nursing it back to health. Milton lived for years beyond what anybody with metastatic bladder cancer is expected to live. And every year we get Christmas cards from Milton and Cat. So, when Rachel had heard me tell this story, she said, what Milton was really asking was whether he could love again. Because Milton was like a swan. He had made it once for life with his wife. And he was a very handsome man, and there were a lot of people in his retirement community, a lot of women, who would be glad with that. But Milton wasn't interested in another wife or another human partner. He wanted to love a cat. But it wasn't just any cat. It was a poor, struggling cat who was so like the children to whom he had devoted his entire life. So you see how unique the fingerprint is of what Milton could love and how that love transformed his life and extended it. You see how unique it was. It wasn't another woman, it was a cat. It wasn't any cat, it was a poor cat. It was a little cat. It was a cat like the children he had raised. So my question is, do each of you know what your cat is? Do you know what that is in your own healing? Whether you have cancer or whether you're dealing with a terminal illness called life. Do you know what it has? Do you know what has that unique power to evoke in you that capacity to heal? And it isn't necessarily about how long you live, although I deeply believe that love extends life wherever it can. It's about what your life is going to be like for however long you live. Is it going to feel kind of humdrum and, get up another day and, don't really like my job, tensions in the family, sit around and watch a lot of television, the way it's possible to live a life? Or are you going to be filled with that sense of how precious this time that we're given is, and that energy that comes from being completely in love? It can be done at any age, friend. You don't have to be young to do it. Just that deep sense of love. And if you find what you love, can you do it in a skillful way? Right? Can you grow in wisdom and learn to love better? Well, that was an interesting riff. Decide where to go from there. So I think I'll go from there to some fairly practical things. 5 choices we all have in healing. Choices, these are the 5 choices that we talk about in the Cancer Health Program. And I see each of them as a book that we can open at any time in our lives and learn more. But those 5 choices, which come up in a big way when you have a cancer diagnosis, are choices in healing itself, choices in medical therapies, choices in integrative or health-promoting therapies or lifestyle, choices when you face pain and suffering, whether physical or psychological and spiritual, and choices when you face death and dying. And to me, those 5 areas are the best way I know to think about expanding your sense of what's available. Because so many people, when they get a cancer diagnosis, they really think, you know what, the first doctor I see knows what should happen to me, and I'm going to do the treatments, and that's what my life is about. All right? And in fact, there's this tremendous field that opens up, not only about medical treatments, which is what the doctor will help you with, but about healing, about integrative therapies, about what to do about pain and suffering, about what to do in the face of death and dying. And it is living in that expanded space that is a beautiful saying that whether or not we can extend life, we can certainly expand it. So an expanding life, in my experience, tends to extend it, because you're living with that vitality. So if you take, for example, the healthy living that we're talking about, whether you talk about good food, reducing stress, exercising, and finding love and support. That's the way Dean Ornish talks about it in his heart program and his work with prostate cancer patients. Or this mnemonic that comes from the Daniel Camp, which comes out of a wonderful evangelical church in Southern California, where they talk about food, fitness, family, focus, and friends. So, no, it doesn't matter how you frame it, but the fact of the matter is, just to get into this aspect of it, that not only do nourishing, healthy foods make you feel better, but if you look into it, there are a whole set of foods with actual anti-cancer activities. The research is stronger and stronger. Take broccoli as a single example, or kale, There's just a whole set of foods, and basically, you can get into that at any depth you want. So if you're living with a standard American diet, do not despair, but just start taking some little steps away from the standard American diet. diet. So for example, if you're eating a lot of animal fat, and you had prostate cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, or ovarian cancer, one of the fat-related cancers, you might want to begin to cut back just a little bit on animal fat, right? That's not necessarily true for all cancers, but if it's a fat-related cancer, you might want to reconsider how much animal fat you're eating. And there's a beautiful book by Rebecca Katz from Commonweal, the Healing Kitchens Institute, called The Cancer Fighting Kitchen. And I know you folks have a really good cookbook as well. But the point is, there are foods that fight cancer, folks, and it isn't about eating a horrible diet. You know, Rebecca talks about the power of yum. You know, in other words, we're talking about having fun, eating a really interesting, wonderful diet. Now, it's a big change to do, and some people find if you do it quickly, it works better, but others do it incrementally. But it's just an example. That's something you can do that is frequently associated with extended survival, and it's something you can do. Or fitness, just take that. You know, the simple fact is that there's a whole huge body of research that if you walk at a decent rate, 4 or 5 times a day for a half hour, it makes a real world of difference, you know. You don't have to get into some marathon trip, just simply moving. You know, our bodies are designed to move. And finding a friend who's willing to walk with you 3 times a week or 4 times a week is a big thing. You know, then friends, support. Just think of this. It is so frequently isolated to have a cancer diagnosis. If you just find one friend, it may be somebody with cancer and it may not, and some regular number of times a week, twice a week, whatever, once a week, you sit down with that person and you just do what's called co-counseling, which is one person talks for some agreed on period of time without being interrupted for, say, 20 minutes. And the other person just listens attentively. And then you switch, and the other person talks. It's an incredibly powerful thing to do. If you want to get a little fancier, after the first person talks, the second person takes 3 or 5 minutes to say what they've heard. Because that changes the quality of the listening. You're not just listening, you're going to remember what you've heard. So, you know, one person talks, the other person says what they've heard, then the other person talks, and the first person says what they've heard. That's so simple. It doesn't cost a cent. You don't need a psychotherapist. And quite honestly, it's often better than psychotherapy, because psychotherapists, if they're good, can be incredible. But so many psychotherapists, to be candid, are second-rate, and they can screw things up more than they can help. So just I want to say to you that sometimes it's better to do this yourself with somebody you love and trust, another person with cancer who may understand what you're going through, or simply a wise friend who's willing to do that for you. And then beyond what you can do with 2 people, you can do that same kind of thing with 3 people. Or if you get to 4 or 5 people, you've got a small group. And then from 4 or 5 up to, say, 8 or 12, we do the kind of things that Harmony Hill does and that we do at Commonweal. Simple rules about how you do this. You sit in a beautiful place. You have a candle in the middle of the room. You start with a silence or a poem. You go around the room and check in with how people are doing. And then you do some kind of soul work. And how do you do soul work? You pass a stone around and each person who is holding it speaks and everybody else simply listens, or a talking stick or whatever. And then at the end, you do a close, another silence, you know, and then afterwards an informal conversation. I'm giving you simple versions of these, but you can do this at home. You don't need Harmony Hill, you don't need Commonweal. We know that not everybody can come to Harmony Hill or Commonweal. We are collectively devoted to creating these healing circles. Just look at Alcoholics Anonymous. They figured out a way to do soul work for alcoholics with no professionals. And they created a system that's all over the world for alcoholics to deal with the horrific experiences of being, and all 12-step programs, if we think about it. So imagine that we began to create something equivalent The Alcoholics Anonymous or 12-step programs for cancer patients. And in fact, if you're familiar with 12 steps, it's not a bad framework for doing this kind of soul work. The point is you want to get down below the conversational level where people chat about therapies and doctors and complain about treatments and stuff like that, which characterizes so many support groups, and get down to the soul place. Because the soul level is where love is. And love has the power to heal. And when you start creating those communities where you're doing soul work together, love emerges. And you begin to love the people who are in this circle with you, no matter how different they are from you in 100,000 other ways. You begin to have that experience of love and love. Does this make sense to you? Yeah. What time is it? Oh, yes. Fair enough. Okay. So I've got about 12 more minutes. So, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about death and dying. And the reason I choose to do this is, first of all, I want to ask you not to suspend fear that I'm going to talk about. The reason we talk about death and dying in the Cancer Health Program is that if you have a diagnosis that might be life-threatening, and you don't look at death and dying, it's the elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. And a lot of people have this idea, which comes from, I think, a deeply mistaken New Age philosophy. And the New Age philosophy goes like this, which I want to be clear is completely wrong. The New Age philosophy is, you caused your cancer, you can cure your cancer, and the way to do that is to keep a positive attitude all the time. Okay? Now, is that remotely familiar to any of you? Have some of you heard? Hey, let me tell you what to do. You caused this, you can cure it, and the way to do it is to keep a positive attitude. Well, we may not think that explicitly, but hovering in the background for so many people is the sense that I want to live, I just have to stay positive all the time, because if I think about the possibility of dying, somehow I may bring that into my life. So imagine how much psychic energy it takes not to look at the elephant in the room. Just imagine how much energy that takes. Whereas if you look at the elephant in the room, if you come to terms with being human, which is that we're all going to die, right? And if you spend some time connecting with your own mortality, you can dramatically reduce the psychic energy that goes into ignoring the energy in the room, the elephant in the room, and you can be in a much more real relationship with your own healing process, which is about not only authentic joy and authentic love and discovery, it's about grief. It's about loss. It's about who you worry about in your family, whether it's your children, or your partner, or your parents, or your work, or whatever it is. You have more energy because you're not trying to suppress the presence of the enemy, of the elephant in the room. So the way we do that in the Cancer Health Program, we do an evening on death and dying, which many people are a little worried about at the beginning, but at the end they say, that was probably the most important evening in the whole program. And we go around the room and we ask two questions that each person answers. The first is, what are your beliefs about death? And the second is, what are your feelings about death? So beliefs, some people say, I know that I'm going to a better place. I know that there's life after death. Other people say, I'm convinced it's the end. There's nothing after that. And there's a third group. It's a mystery. It is a mystery. I'm in the third group. I don't know that I'm going to a better place. I don't know that it is the end. It is a mystery. But I will tell you, in 30 years of doing the Cancer Health Program, I went from being completely agnostic about the nature of that mystery, I just didn't know. I've had too many experiences are visits from people who have gone on. And I have been in the presence of hundreds of people, probably thousands of people, who have told me of their experiences. And I have also been in the presence of people who themselves clinically died and then were resuscitated. And they had the classic experience that is described in the large scientific literature on near-death experiences, that they saw friends coming forward for them. They went through a dark tunnel. They realized that the universe is actually made of light. They saw a light at the end of the tunnel. They were moving toward the light, which they may have experienced as the Christ or the Buddha or simply a light. And then one of two things happened. Either they were told, it's not your time, or they were asked, do you want to go on or do you want to go back? So the ones that we know about have elected to go back. They go shooting back down the tunnel, they find themselves in their bodies, and they never fear death in the same way again. Now there's a big, good, well-researched literature that this happens. It doesn't happen with everybody, but it happens with about 10% of the people, or at least 10% of people in these studies remember this experience. And that experience, of course, is completely connected to what the spiritual traditions have been telling us for the last few millennia, right? And it's completely congruent with a whole set of other psi phenomena, that people who research psi phenomena, remote viewing, and telepathic stuff, and intuition. Intuition is one of the clearest forms of our telepathic capacity. There's more to the world than we know, at least in my humble opinion. There's more to the world than we know. And so there is this opportunity in life to connect through our intuition, through prayer, through meditation, through faith, through just questioning. There's this opportunity to connect. I remember once I did a panel with Rachel Naomi Brown and Angeles Arian, a friend of ours in Mario Martha. And it was on death and dying, and I was facilitating the panel. And I said to them, Suki Miller was the third one, who was also written on death and dying. I said to them, if you had one instruction for people who, perhaps to their great surprise, discovered after they died that they were still there, what was the one instruction that you would like everybody to know? And I also ask you to remember this. It is whatever your beliefs about whether death is the end. If you wake up on the other side of death and you remember you're still there, what all three of them agree on, the single instruction, also in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and many other places, follow the light. If you don't remember anything else from the day, just if you turn out to wake up after you die and you're confused, you don't know where you are, you may be tempted to hang around and try to contact people, this, that, and the other. There will be a light. Follow the light. It's a very, very powerful. Just consider it like some people have go bags in their cars, if they have to leave suddenly, they have their medications and some money and stuff like that. Put it in your go bag, right? If you need to take this journey, which we're all going to end up taking, just put it in your go bag, a little piece of paper that says, follow the light. So we're just about at the end here, and what I want to close with is this. Just a couple of things. Every single person in this room, including Gretchen and Eric and Cindy and I and all the staff here and all of you who've been on these programs, you know what? We are pilgrims together on a path through life. We are pilgrims, and none of us know very much. None of us know very much. And so the only way to approach this is with a deep and profound humility about how little we know and how mysterious the universe is. And with a sense that this time, however much time we're given, is so profoundly precious. And it's just not worth spending it in any other way than in the fullest love that we can find, with the fullest curiosity that we can find about what we can learn, and with the fullest sense of service, some form of service. One of the forms of service that is available to each of you in this room, one of the most beautiful forms, is to support harmony health. It really is. And so, I'll tell you, I have traveled a lot. I have looked at a lot of places doing this work. And when I came here, I just had this enormous sense of being at home. And the energy and beauty and power of what Gretchen and Eric and Cindy and Denise and the whole staff and this whole community has created is astonishing. You created a gift for this part of the world. Free programs for people with cancer, free retreats. Give me a break. Do you have any idea how precious that is? So, if we can do something together. Last night, I didn't expect to bid on the auction, Let me tell you, following an auctioneer at the guitar is an experience I've never had before. I didn't expect to bid on anything, but I found myself contributing $500 to this place because it wasn't enough just to admire the work, not just to find it wise, to find it loving. You have to put it into reality. Love, wisdom, and purpose to will. You have to step into it. So I stepped into it. And I just want you all to the place that you're able to do it. Step into it with me. Let's all do it together.